For the main 1-card Yummy combo, any Yummy in the main deck will perform this play, and you'll also want a card for discarding. We're going to start off with normal summoning any Yummy from the hand, as we then link it off into Yummy Snatchy, which will trigger on someone to play the field spell from the deck, which will be the Minion. Minion will activate to reborn a Yummy from the graveyard if you control link 1, as we synchro both into a Cupsy. Cupsy will be searching for the non-synchro Cupsy and a Marshmallow as we discard away the Beaver Warrior. Special summon the Cupsy from the hand, search our deck for the Yummy Surprise. Special summon Marshmallow, as we're then going to use the Marshmallow and the Synchro to synchro into a Metal Marcher. Metal Marcher is going to activate, reborn the Cupsy Synchro back on the field, as we're now going to turn the Cupsy and the Metal Marcher into a Herald of Arclight. Now, before this play, that is when they will Nibiru, and I will show you the Anti-Nibiru play. Further on, we're going to link off the Cupsy Synchro into another Yummy Snatchy, which it is semi-limited. We're going to use Yummy Surprise, reborn the Marshmallow from Engrave, which will trigger on summon to add back the Yummy Surprise. We're now going to use the Snatchy and the Marshmallow to synchro into a Lollipo. Lollipo is going to activate, reborn 2 monsters from Engrave, the Marshmallow and the Cupsy. We're now going to use the Cupsy and the Lollipo to link off into a Sprite Elf. This is why it's very important for your Herald of Arclight to either be in the far left, far right, or in the middle to ensure that Sprite Elf will be pointing to it to make it untargetable. Now, we're going to be using the Sprite Elf to reborn the Lollipo from the graveyard, set the Yummy Surprise, and this will be our ending field. While this does not seem like much, you have to see how the interruptions are used during the opponent's turn. They're going to draw a ton of cards here. They're going to start off with an activated Rahu. Now, what's crazy about this is Herald of Arclight is completely untargetable thanks to the Sprite Elf, and any monster sent from the hand or main deck to the graveyard is banished instead. So against Draco Tail, none of their cards activate when used for fusion summoning. Now, when they activate anything, that's when you could chain your Yummy Synchro to return itself back to the extra deck to reborn any 2 cards from the grave. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to chain the Lollipo to the Rahu, reborn from Engrave the Yummy Snatchy, and additionally the Cookie Yummy. Now let's resolve the Rahu, which, as you can see there, both cards getting banished. And the Arthalion, even though the cards are banished, will still activate the targeted card in the field. And this is where in the TCG they would be targeting the Herald of Arclight to get it off the field, but they can't because the Sprite Elf is protecting it. Now, with that hitting the field, it's going to be activating, targeting the Sprite Elf. We're going to be using the trigger effect of Cookie Yummy. When reborn from the graveyard from a synchro effect, it could target a monster the opponent controls and then destroy it. That's going to be one of our forms of disruption. Now, we also have the trigger effect of Yummy Snatchy, which you saw turn 1 to play the Minion field spell. Instead, we're going to replace it with another field spell to give us an additional disruption. We're also going to be chaining the Sprite Elf before it gets blown up by the Arthalion, or I should say return back to the extra deck, as we reborn from the grave the Cupsy Yummy Way level 2 synchro. Goodbye to our on-field Minion field spell as we now play the Acro. Acro is going to be triggering when any of our monsters leave the field by card effect. We'll then summon another one from the deck, but more importantly, when we perform a Synchro, it's going to trigger the effect to pop any card on the field. They're now going to follow up with a Key2, but we still have the protection of Heralds, so their cards will get banished when used for fusion summoning. And because they activated an effect, we're going to use the Synchro to reborn up to 2 cards in the grave. But as you can see here, our field is quite clogged, so we're going to want to use the Yummy Snatchy effect to quick effect Synchro before the resolution of our Synchro. They're going to chain Femina, which is going to be banished to even activate, as we now activate the Yummy Snatchy to ensure that we have room for the 2 monsters we want to summon from the grave. We're going to be syncing off the Yummy Snatchy and the Marshmallow into a Cookie Yummy Way. I'm going to put it into the extra monster zone to make room, as all their cards are getting banished as they now go into Secretary on Dragon. In addition to that, we're going to be resolving to reborn the Cupsy and the Snatchy from the graveyard. Now, the Cupsy, in addition to the Cookie having a trigger effect when reborn from the graveyard through a Synchro, is going to activate on summon to either search our deck for a Yummy card, but if reborn from the graveyard with the Synchro, we get to draw a card instead. This is an opportunity to instead draw into an additional hand trap. They're also going to be summoning a Goulamel. Now, let's resolve all of these trigger effects. They have the Arthalion reborning, we have the Cupsy activating to draw 1 card, we have the Cookie Yummy Way on summon is going to flip up to 2 cards on the field, face down you go. Let's now randomly draw into an impermanence, unfortunately not activatable. Arthalion is now on the field. They're going to normal summon Albaz, which will discard to fuse with one of our cards on the field. We are going to be responding with the Cookie Yummy because they activated an effect. We always want to try to jump off to reborn up to 2 cards. But again, we have too many monsters, so we're not going to get the full benefit of reborning 2 unless we make a play in addition to this. In addition to our cookie, we're going to be chaining the Yummy Surprise. Very important chain link order here. You do not want to put the Yummy Snatchy on the lower chain link. You want the quick play card to be on the lower chain link, and then on the higher chain link, you're going to use the Snatchy. What exactly are we doing here? Well, we're going to be targeting 4 cards on the field. We're going to target our Yummy Snatchy and one of our Yummy Monsters plus 2 cards on their field. And in order to resolve this, we don't have to return our own cards back to the hand. So we're going to chain synchro before our cards get returned back to dodge the effect of being returned back, while we still get to return their cards back. Activate the Yummy Snatch in the higher chain link, as I said, in response to the surprise, returning 4 cards on the field back. Both of our own targeted cards are now in the graveyard as we synchro into a Cupsy Yummy way. Surprise returning back the Albaz, thus the effect is nullified, and say goodbye to their Arthalion, which was reborn from the grave, which is why it was banished. Let's now have the Snatchy and the Marshmallow reborn from the grave, remember from our synchro chaining to the Albaz. Cupsy's going to be triggering to search our deck. Marshmallow's going to be recycling a card from the grave. We are also choosing to use our field spell to pop a card in the field, even though we don't really need to. I'm pretty much running out of spots to use our interruptions on because we have so many. But wait, there's more. We have Yummy Snatchy activating to perform another Synchro Summon. We're going to Synchro off the Cupsies, both of them, into a Tatsunoko. What is going on here? As we pop away their card, which could be a back row or monster due to the field spell destruction effect, adding back the Yummy Surprise, we're going to be searching for 2 Yummy Monsters, discarding the other one, but it gets banished due to the Herald. We're now going to use the Yummy Snatchy to synchro with the Tatsunoko and a card in our hand. What? A card in our hand? Yes. The Tatsunoko allows, if this would be Synchro Summoning, to use a card in the hand. We're now going to go into a Cupid Pitch, which it's very important that the Tatsunoko is a level 3 tuner, because based off of the tuner's level, that is how the Cupid Pitch is going to gain or reduce its level. We're going to increase the Cupid Pitch's level to level 7. And then, on the resolution, do not change the Cupid Pitch. You have to let it resolve. We're now going to Synchro again using the effect of Yummy Snatchy to go into Banned in the TCG Borreload Savage Dragon, which will give us an additional Omni Negate. The Cupid Pitch will also be activating to search our deck for a Marshmallow. It could search for a Fool Loss, but we do not want that, of course. Here's a Marshmallow for our follow-up. Now they have Branded Fusion. Negate the Branded Fusion, mate. And don't forget, Herald of Arclight is also in Omni Negate. Another Branded Fusion, mate. Negate the Branded Fusion. Tons of disruption. A lot of cool tricks of jumping off the field, making room on the field, synchroing into a Borreload Savage Dragon. If you care to have room for a Baron to floor, you could even use a level 2 synchro plus the Borreload after it negates something to additionally make a Baron to floor. For this combo, you need Sky Striker Engage, or you could instead hard open up into your Hornet. Hornet's going to be activating to play a token onto the field. We're going to link it off into a Kagari. Very important. For the Engage and the Hornet, you must control nothing in the main monster zone. So with other Yummies in the hand, you must start off with these plays generally, unless you're planning on putting your body into the extra monster zone, then you could follow up afterward. Now, on summon, Kagari is going to trigger to add back the Hornet. I should also note, very important, with this combo, if you try to do this play and you're wondering why your Kagari is not activating, it is because you activated Purge from your hand, which will turn off this play. Fire monsters will not be activatable for the rest of this duel. As we now add back the Hornet, we're going to be activating it to summon another token onto the field. Let's now synchro these 2 into the Cupsy Yummy way. On summon, trigger to grab a Cupsy and a Marshmallow, discard the extra card, special summon the Cupsy, searching for the surprise, special summon the Marshmallow. We're now going to synchro these off into the Metal Marcher. Metal Marcher on resolution is going to be reborning. This is when they'd want a Nibiru. I will show you the Anti-Nibiru play right after this. As we now synchro off the Metal Marcher and the Cupsy into the Herald of Arclight. Now we're going to further link off the Cupsy Yummy way into the Yummy Snatchy. Yummy Snatchy on summon will trigger to play a field spell from the deck. We're now going to activate Surprise in response to this, because this is a cool little trick. You don't have to do this, but it allows us to use the Surprise to, instead of reborning a Marshmallow, we could reborn a Synchro, which is generally of higher value, as we are reborning the Marshmallow with the field spell, which will still recycle back the Yummy Surprise. So instead of just reborning the Marshmallow twice with the field spell and the Surprise, this allows you to get a Synchro out instead. Marshmallow on summon, triggered to add back the Surprise. We're now going to be synchroing into the Lollipo. Lollipo on summon reborn 2 monsters from the graveyard, which are going to be non-synchros and non-links, as we now use the extra synchro to go into a Sprite Elf with one of the monsters we reborn with Lollipo. Use the Sprite Elf to reborn back onto the field the Cupsy, as we're now going to be linking off the Lollipo and the Marshmallow into a Masquerena. This means you did not need to do that cool play of surprise reborning a synchro. It was completely just for show, just to show that it's a possibility. Could have been the Marshmallow twice, as we just linked off the synchro into a Masquerena. So it's very similar to our first play we did with Yummy, but this is a little bit better. We have additionally a Masquerena for that extra disruption going into a card like Little Knight. Set the Yummy Surprise, and there you go. That is the play. It is now time to counter Nibiru. Start off with any Yummy from the hand. We're going to link it off into a Yummy Snatchy. Trigger on summon, play the Minion from the deck. Minion reborn, a Yummy from the graveyard. We're going to be synchroing both on field into a Cupsy Yummy way. On summon, search our deck for a Cupsy Yummy and a Marshmallow, discarding our extra card. We're going to special summon the Cupsy, special summon the Marshmallow. And then we're going to be synchroing off the Cupsy Synchro and the Marshmallow into the Metal Marcher. Metal Marcher, activate, reborn onto the field, and this is when they want Nibiru before we summon our Herald of Arc Light. Activate Nibiru, goodbye to our entire field. Now for our play, we are making use of the Cupsy Synchro in the graveyard. Otherwise, some people would prefer to return this back in the extra deck, but again, we're going to make use of it, so I purposely leave it in the graveyard. Otherwise, even though it is negated, it still returns by cost back in the extra if you want to. You're going to link off the Nibiru token into a Link Spider. We're going to follow up with the Yummy Surprise. Reborn onto the field, the Marshmallow. Trigger, add back the Yummy Surprise, as we're now going to go into a Lollipo. Lollipo on summon, reborn 2 level 1s back onto the field from the grave. We're now going to link off into a Sprite Elf. Sprite Elf, activate, reborn the Lollipo back in the field. We're now going to further link off the Marshmallow into a Snatchy, set, then pass. Now you can optionally, if you want to, instead of this field, you can make a Little Knight behind the Sprite Elf to banish away the Nibiru, and then on their turn, the Sprite Elf could reborn back one of the level 2 synchros we have in the graveyard, in addition to having the benefit of Yummy Surprise. Now, why could this field be beneficial? Well, I'm going to show you some additional options in addition to if you wanted to use a Little Knight. So if you chose this option instead, let's see what they could do. You're going to draw a ton of cards. They're attempting to end the main phase, so only after they set a card, play a card, or attempt to end the main phase can we activate Sprite Elf in response. We're now going to be reborning our Cupsy from the graveyard. As he now goes to the battle phase, we're going to use the Yummy Surprise to reborn a monster from the grave, so we do lose out on the ability of returning multiple cards back to their hand. As we reborn the Cookie, Cookie is going to trigger on summon, but if not summoned with the Synchro, it only has the effect of reducing the attack of an opposing monster. Well, that's okay here. We're going to not only get the boost of the field spell as we're still not big enough, but then reduce the Nibiru down to 2,000. Now Nibiru is changing its attack as it can't attack into any of our Yummy monsters. Now, we already used up our Sprite Elf. We don't care about Sprite Elf. Besides, it still is giving us targeting protection, so you could optionally, if you want to, still protect your Sprite Elf even though we already used it, as no other monster can even be attacked into. You could also not even trigger the effect of the Cookie Yummy. You could have just gone directly into the Cookie Synchro, flip down the Nibiru, and then you would still have the additional disruption of the Cookie Yummy. So there's just so many different options on whether you Little Knight, Cookie Reduce, or you Cookie Yummy way flip it down. It's all up to you. Now, we're going to protect the Sprite Elf just for a showcase here. I'm not telling you this is the optimal way to play this. It is just an option you have. We have so many options to deal with that Nibiru, and they also lose out on their battle phase while we did lose out on some other options. And what are we left with? We're left with 3 Synchros. If they activate or do anything, we're going to return back, reborn 2. They activate again, return back, reborn 2. We could do up to 6 monsters from the graveyard. We're going to want multiple Yummy Snatchies, multiple activates to Synchro. You could Synchro into a Herald of Arc Light during the opponent's turn. And if the situation allows it, we could also go into a Borreload Savage Dragon. So many options with this, but it's going to depend on what exactly the opponent does to you. And don't forget, you're going to play the field spell from your deck, from your Snatchy, reborning to be an additional pop on the fields. One of the best ways to play Yummy will be with Mitsurugi. So I'm going to be showcasing to you with Habakiri and how Yummy could go into Mitsurugi. We're going to start off Habakiri, which does not require any other card in the hand. We're going to special summon Saji, which dodges impermanence, trigger its effect engrave to search for a ritual. We're going to be ritual summoning from the deck. This effect is ashable, but the Ash Choke point, the correct one, is to negate the Saji. Now, we're going to be summoning the Murakumo from the deck, triggering the Engrave Habakiri to search for the prayers. We're now going to use prayers to tribute off the Murakumo to search for another Habakiri, reborning back in the field the Saji, and then we're going to trigger Engrave our Murakumo to search for an additional prayers, reborning itself back in the field here. Now, if you're familiar with the TCG, you must be thinking, what the heck, this combo's wrong. No, in the TCG, they can't perform this play. This is exclusive to OCG and Master Duel because they are missing a card. As you can see here, they have to go into Zombie Vampire, thus they have to play Mirror. You don't have to play this, but it could still be a good option to play this because pre-preparation is a really good card. Otherwise, optionally, you don't need this, but again, if you do want to play it, go ahead, play it. If you switch on over to OCG, you're going to see they instead have the Camellia. Camellia is going to be our 2-card combo play to bridge into Yummy instead. Let's now link off the 2 on field into Camellia. Camellia is going to send from the deck. See, you don't even need to play Engage. You can optionally play Engage in this deck. Otherwise, we could just play 1 Hornet, send the Hornet from the deck to the graveyard, and then we're going to add it back to our hand with the Kagari. And just like that, now we have bridged our way successfully into Yummy. Let's complete our combo. Summon a token with the Hornets. We're going to synchro these 2 into the Cupsy Yummy way. On summon, search in our deck for the Cupsy and Marshmallow. Special the Marshmallow, special the Cupsy. We have not even performed a normal summon, by the way. Searching for a Yummy Surprise. We're now going to go into, this card is very important. We're going to have to summon the Sorrow Cat into the extra monster zone here. You want it there. Anywhere else it does not work. So you can link it off into a Gravity Controller. Now, we're going to be linking off the Cupsy on field into a Yummy Snatchy, and you could be thinking, where's the Metal Marcher? Well, to be honest, this extra deck does not have room for the Metal Marcher, so we are instead playing the better Samsora for this combo because it's going to make a lot more sense when I show you the other play with Yummy bridging its way into the Mitsurugi instead. Now, Yummy Snatchy is going to be, this is very important. I do summon the Gravity Controller in the left extra monster zone to then summon the Snatchy in the far left zone here. You're going to see why it's very important as it plays the minion from the deck here. I do have to customly optimize these combos because they do not exist in the TCG. Not even in the OCG does this exist, and you'll see why. Now you could use the Samsara to reborn back onto the field, and we're now going to turn the 2 bodies into a Herald of Arc Light. We're going to use the Yummy Surprise, reborn the Marshmallow. Marshmallow is going to trigger to add back to our hand the Yummy Surprise. We're now going to use the Gravity Controller and the Yummy to go into a Lollipo. Lollipo is going to trigger reborn 2 level 1s from Engrave, as we're now going to be further using those 2 bodies to go into a Sprite Elf. Sprite Elf is going to be reborning back the Lollipo. We're now going to further go into a Masquerena. And this is why it's very important with the Gravity Controller to put the Yummy Snatchy on the far left here, because otherwise you're not going to either be able to summon a Masquerena or you can't have the targeting protection onto Herald of the Arc Light. And you need this targeting protection here. This is very important if you're going to be playing against Dracotail. It ensures that their Arthalion is not going to be able to target the Herald of Arc Light. They're going to have to waste a bunch of fusion materials as they get banished instead. And for anyone playing in permanence, they're not going to be able to imperm your Herald of Arc Light. This is such a big deal. And with the Yummy Snatchy over there, of course, we get to make Masquerena. And Masquerena has to be 2 non-link monsters. You can't go Snatchy plus another body into Masquerena. And then we're going to be setting our cards, and I'm going to talk about some of the disruptions we have here. Similar to the first combo, if you did not watch it, I showcase how to play the interruptions out, and you should be watching that because I'm not going to go as in-depth with this play, but I will show you the Murakumo being reborn. Now, as soon as the opponent does anything in main phase 1, we could then use Sprite Elf to reborn any of our synchros in the graveyard to ensure that they could change the opponent's card effects to then reborn additionally 2 other cards. Now they're going to be going into Link Spider, sure, a really powerful play here. Because they activate the Link Spider, we're going to be reborning 2 bodies from the graveyard. We'll go Cupsy into the Marshmallow. They're both going to trigger. We're going to draw a card, and the Marshmallow will also add from the graveyard. We're going to use the Masquerena to link off one of the Yummies. Now, the surprise wasn't engraved to add back, so that didn't trigger. We randomly draw into Nibiru, of course. We're now going to use Little Knight. Can banish a card on the field or in the graveyard. I'm going to banish in the graveyard because instead, we're going to be using the prayers to reborn onto the field Murakumo. Murakumo is going to activate to wipe away the entire field of monsters. Absolutely nuts. And through the protection of Sprite Elf. Love it. For this combo, this is playing Yummy, bridging our way into the Mitsurugi. Now, let's begin with any Yummy we want in our hand. It does not matter. Plus any other card to discard. Standard Yummy plays. So very similar to our first play within this video, but we're going to bridge into Mitsurugi. We're going to summon the Snatchy, play the field spell Minion from the deck, reborn from the grave the Cookie or whatever monster we played initially. We're going to go into Cupsy Yummy Way, searching for a Cupsy and Marshmallow, discard the additional card in hand, special the Cupsy, search for the surprise, special the Marshmallow. And now we're going to be synchroing off into the Samsara as we further synchro into Herald of the Arc Light. It must be placed in the extra monster zone with the Herald of Arc Light, because only then can we link it off into a Gravity Controller. Gravity Controller is now going to be allowing us to trigger the Herald of Arc Light. Now, this card is limited to 1, so what the heck? Are we okay with this? It's okay. We're going to return it back into the extra deck with the Samsara, as we now searched for our Habakiri. Let's continue. Habakiri, special summon from the deck, the Saji. Saji is going to be tributed off, searching for the Mitsurugi Ritual. Now, you have an option here if you want to try to build towards your Herald of Arc Light before you make any other plays with the Mitsurugi Ritual or even the Habakiri, but if you could get a Murakumo on the field and then build towards the Herald of Arc Light, I think generally that's going to be better, because if they want to use a hand trap towards any of your other additional Yummy plays, even in Nibiru, you have a non-tributed Murakumo, we're going to make sure of that, and then it's going to be much more trouble for them. But still, it's an option for you if you are deathly afraid of an Ash Blossom being used onto the Saji or onto the Ritual here, as the Ash is usable on Ritual here. So again, it's up to you if you want to play around Ash better. If they didn't use Ash already, that is. Now, the Habakiri is going to trigger search for the prayers. We're not going to be tributing off the Murakumo, because what if they have Nibiru? We're going to hold on to this play, and now we're going to be making the Yummy plays instead. Marshmallow is going to be reborn with surprise. We're going to be using the controller and the Marshmallow to go into Lollipo. Lollipo is going to reborn 2 bodies from engraved, 2 level 1s. As we now use the Samsara to return the Herald of Arc Light back in the extra deck to reborn itself back in the field. And now we get to make the Herald of Arc Light. Now we can safely use the prayers. Prayers would tribute off the Murakumo, searching for Habakiri, reborn onto the field the Saji. We're going to trigger the Murakumo to search for another prayers, reborn itself back onto the field here. We're going to make use of the Saji and a level 2 to make a Sprite Elf. Now, we're going to use Elf to reborn onto the field the Lollipo. We're now going to use the Lollipo and the Murakumo to go into a Baron de Floor. If you don't want to play Baron de Floor, it's still a good idea to just have the Murakumo on the field to ensure that you can negate something early or force them to discard a card early. Otherwise, it being in the graveyard plus the prayers in most cases will be safe enough. And we now have an additional Omni Negate thanks to Baron de Floor Mate. This is banned in the TCG. They can't make this play. Now, I am purposely making it so Baron de Floor is targetable, because unfortunately, this is prime real estate behind the Sprite Elf. It's much better to have the Herald of Arc Light be protected, and then we're going to want a Link monster behind the Sprite Elf. Let's further link off into a Yummy Snatchy, and we're going to set our cards just like that. There you go. Snatchy cannot be targeted, nor can the Herald of Arc Light. And now there is another play here where I'm going to ensure that the Murakumo is chain link blocked from a potential play that they may have. They're going to summon their Digitron. What the heck? Sprite Elf. As soon as you can, you want to use the Sprite Elf to reborn a monster, which will be the level 2 synchro, to ensure that you can respond to their card effect to reborn 2 bodies. We're now going to use the prayers. We're not just going to activate to reborn. We're going to be tributing off the Habakiri here so that we gain an additional Habakiri and we get to chain link block the Murakumo board wipe effect if they were to potentially, let's say, have an Omni Negate. Instead of being able to negate the Murakumo, you now get to wipe away their field. Now, let's see how this continues, and you do, yeah, this is fine. There we go. Chain link block, perfect. And now we have also a follow-up. So it's a chain link block and a follow-up Mitsurugi prayers as we non-target wipe away their fields. In addition to having a Baron de Floor, Herald of Arc Light, oh my Jesus. I think one of the biggest downsides of this deck is going to be properly managing your monster slots. You have too many. When you continually want to activate your synchros to reborn 2 bodies in the graveyard, you got to just hope that your opponent does something worthy enough of just getting rid of your other monsters just so you have room. Now it's time for Fiendsmith, and I'm not telling you that this is the best way to play. It just additionally is another good way to play the Yummy deck. In fact, in YCS Japan Nagoya, there was a 5,000 player event. Mitsurugi was fully legal in this event, and you know what they have? have that TCG does not have, where TCG prefers Mitsurugi, they have Max C. And because of Max C, no one wanted to play Mitsurugi within this event. They were all on Fiendsmith. And in fact, they can no longer play their deck like this because they got the Moon of the Closed Heaven banned. Banned in TCG, banned in OCG. Only in Master Duel do we have this option to play the deck. Thus, we're going to show you the play. And we will additionally use and abuse Sprite Elf as we do in all the other plays. Let's Engraver, search for the tract. I will admit the Sprite Elf is very difficult to fit into the extra deck. So for the Fiendsmith version, if you don't want to play it, you don't have to. And that's what I would say is the biggest downside of the Fiendsmith engine is that while it makes the deck more hand trap resilient and more resilient to a Droll and Lockbird, the biggest weakness is how many spots it eats up in your extra deck. We're going to be reborning our 2 cards, and as you saw there, we didn't have to send from the deck another Engraver to show how minimal this is, as we now have the sequence. Now we're going to have another crazy play. We are returning back in the deck, not the Lurie. We have to keep that in the graveyard. With the Lurie still engraved, we're going to summon the Fiendsmith Lacrima. Fiendsmith Lacrima is going to be reborning back the Lurie, and I know this feels so wrong. It felt real dirty for me. We're going to have to use the sequence on field, not from in the grave, unfortunately, because we still need the extra monster zone. We're going to activate it to equip onto the Lacrima. Yes, we just minus a monster just to turn it into a princess. But because it's in the extra monster zone, we can now turn it into our gravity controller. Gravity control, come forth, as we can now go into a synchro, right? This makes sense, using a Link 1 to synchro. Cupsy, Yummy way. Now, let's fulfill the entire play, and then I'm going to show you the other way as Yummy bridges into Fiendsmith, which I will say is a bit better. Now, this is also, it seems unoptimal, I know, but the space in the extra deck, it's so tight. So I have the Herald of Arclight being summoned through 2 level 1s and the Cupsy on field. A lot of things feel weird about this, but I promise you, these are the plays given the restrictions we have on the extra deck with how tight it is. If you want to fit in a Metal Marcher or some other card to make it more efficient, sure, go ahead. This is me showing you minimally what you could do instead, so you don't have to play that. We're going to reborn the Marshmallow, add back the Yummy Surprise. We're going to link off into a Yummy Snatchy. Snatchy's going to play the field spell from the deck, Mignon, which is going to be reborning back the Marshmallow, as we now turn both bodies into the Lalipo. Lalipo, reborn back onto the field here. Lalipo is the greatest enabler for our Sprite Elf. Making sure to summon the Herald of Arclight in the left, middle, or right so we could target it with the Sprite Elf arrow. We're going to summon a Yummy Snatchy, further Sprite Elf reborning, a Synchro on the field, set our back row, and just like that, we have our great play bridged through with our Fiendsmith way. This will be Yummy bridging its way into Fiendsmith. Use and abuse the banned in TCG and OCG Moon of the Closed Heaven. Let's do it. Start off with any Yummy from the hand. It does not matter, as we're going to link it off into the Snatchy. Trigger its effect to play a Minion from the deck. Activate on field to reborn the Cookie if we have a Link 1. Further synchrons the Cupsy Yummy way. Cupsy Yummy searching for a Cupsy and a Marshmallow. Special summon our regular Cupsy searching for the Yummy Surprise. Marshmallow special summon itself onto the field as we now turn those 2 bodies into a Moon of the Closed Heaven. As we further go into Requiem. Requiem's going to be summoning from the deck here into the Lacrima Crimson Tear. Crimson Tear on summon is going to send Engraver here. Now, are we more susceptible to Nibiru? No, it's the same as regular Yummy. We hold on to the Surprise in hand. We'll make a Link Spider. We'll then reborn. We'll fully play through it as you saw my Anti-Nibiru play. And we're going to have a different Nibiru choke point on them instead. Now, we're going to turn those 2 bodies, the level 2 Synchro plus the Crimson Tear, to the sequence. Sequence will return the Moon and the Crimson Tear to go into a Fiendsmith Lacrima. Fiendsmith Lacrima is going to target Engraver to add back to the hand if we are playing that version of the deck with Fiendsmith Tract. We're now going to use the Engraver to reborn itself onto the field, and this is where they have to Nibiru. If they don't Nibiru, well, they're going to then be negated. As we now turn them into a Wave King Caesar. Let's activate the Tract, grab a Lurie, discard it. Lurie is going to trigger, reborn itself onto the field here, as we now turn the Lurie in sequence into a Sprite Elf. Elf is going to be activating to reborn the Cupsy Yummy way. We're going to use the Yummy Surprise now, finally reborning the Marshmallow to add back the Surprise to give it that additional disruption of returning 2 cards the opponent controls back to the hand during their turn. We now have the Yummy Snatchy plus the Marshmallow going into the Lalipo. Lalipo before the Sprite Elf, that's right, reborn 2 level 1 monsters from Engrave. we're now going to, you know, as it appears to be an unoptimal Herald of Arclight, but if our extra deck space is tight, you gotta make room for the Lacrima, the High King Caesar, the Moon of the Closed Heaven, the Requiem, the Sequence, all that craziness if you want to play Fiendsmith. So if you have room for, you want to play Metal Marcher or the Starham, or if you want to play the Samsara, be my guest and you can make a more optimal Herald of Arclight. Otherwise, this still works. Now you could be thinking, what the heck, where's the Yummy? The Sprite Elf will reborn a Yummy, or the Yummy Surprise will. Either way, we're gonna have a Yummy on the field in response to their plays. So as soon as they do anything in main phase, it can include them trying to end the main phase, we could reborn a Synchro, and they have to do something, right? Or they're gonna lose. And once they do something, we'll chain the Synchro, otherwise we have the Surprise to help initiate the Yummy plays. But you do want to prioritize the Surprise, if possible, for the effect of returning 2 cards the opponent controls instead. Now, what's great about this, we additionally have the Wave King Caesar, negate 2 special summons. So why would you want to play this over any other version? Well, this gives us good resilience against a Droll and Lockbird. If they were to Droll you, you can make the full Fiendsmith play without disruption, as long as it's not Engraver, add tracks, that you get Drolled there, that's a problem. But if you can make a Requiem, you have a Wave King Caesar on the field, double special summon negate, and if they disrupt any of your plays and you have to end there, you can instead go into the Moon of the Closed Heaven, and as you saw here, full Wave King Caesar from there. What are some good counters against Yummy that may be worth main decking? Dark Ruler No More is going to be incredibly powerful against Yummy. It's a bit sus main deck on this because it does nothing going first, but you can use Thrust to help add it to the hand, and if you use this against Yummy, it's also going to be messing up the Mitsurugi plays. The Prayers will not be able to take 800 damage to further reborn a monster, so that could also mess up the Murakumo. So that's an additional benefit with the Dark Ruler No More, also ensuring that the Herald of Arclight cannot negate this. Ghost Ogre is going to be a pretty good card to play against Yummy, but only if used correctly. One of the main ways to completely break Yummy is if they commit to a normal summon, they then go into Yummy Snatchy with no other monster on the field, they then activate this effect. That could be a big mistake from the Yummy player, because if they activate this effect with no other monsters, you chain an Ogre, well, they're going to lose their Link 1, they still play the field spell, but the field spell requires a Link 1 to be on the field to even reborn a monster. So think of the case of, if they have extra Yummies in the hand and a Yummy engrave plus the field spell, they end their turn, they're done. What I'm going to recommend to you is, let's say you have a play of 2 cookies in your hand. You normal cookie, you go into Yummy Snatchy, consider not activating the Yummy Snatchy, because you're going to not want to get blown out by a Ghost Ogre. Could also help play around Imperm. Just try to activate the Snatchy later within the turn to play the Minion, because you don't need the Minion right then and there. You can instead extend with the cookie from the hand to make your normal plays, and then once you reborn the Snatchy later, they're going to have to be forced to use the Ogre on something like the Minion itself, which by then you're going to have a great field nonetheless. Murakumo, I think, is going to be a great counter against Yummy. Now, based off this, you may be thinking, well, if that's the case, then won't Mitsurugi Yummy be the best way to play the deck? Well, if Yummy's the best deck, then that could very well be a real possibility here. Even with Yummy doing well in OCG, they still did not prefer to play Mitsurugi with their Yummy. I think Maxi being the main reason why. If Yummy is the sole best deck in Master Duel, this may be the best way to do it. And they're going to have a Herald of Arclight, right? Well, you want to ensure that you Chain Link block the Murakumo. Any other Mitsurugi card triggering on Chain Link 2 or higher with the Murakumo on the lower Chain Link, and then the Herald of Arclight will not be working for them. Ghost Bell, I don't think this is an amazing counter against Yummy, but if you're playing Ghost Bell because of Draco Tail Horn, randomly using Ghost Bell against one of the Synchros trying to reborn 2 bodies from the graveyard, I think that could be a great option. It's going to catch them completely off guard. They're going to lose their body. They may even plan their entire play around it. They could very possibly just be ending their turn early. Now for the absolute best deck list to play Yummy. It's going to be on MasterDuelMeta.com as the site gets updated live with Master 1 and Tournament deck lists. The deck will very quickly be on the tier list, and then it will have a great deck breakdown page looking like this. But otherwise, we're going to have to go to Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta for some suggestions. Click on this, go onto the tier list, and we're going to be looking at Mitsurugi Yummy and regular Yummy. Starting off with Mitsurugi Yummy, this is the TCG way to play. You could scroll down here, you could see the tier 3 events, which is Wise Hiss or better. You could further use the filter to just show tier 3 only, and you do want to take into account that they have to play the zombie Vampire. You do not have to. You're going to play Camellia instead, and because they have to play Zombie Vampire, that necessitates the use of the Mitsurugi Mirror, which is why they further play the pre-preparation of rights. Now, if Murakumo is so good at countering Yummy, you probably still want to play pre-prep anyway to further make it more consistent that you get to your Murakumo to wipe away the Yummy fields. With that said, this is the general breakdown. If I click on this for tier 3 only, this is the TCG. Now for OCG, where it is a lot less popular to play the deck, you're going to be using Camellia instead of being required to go into the Zombie Vampire. The Zombie Vampire, to be fair, has a really high chance of extending into Yummy, but there is a chance that it could whiff. And then here are the limited deck lists. Here is a second place deck list that you could copy. Otherwise, check out the dedicated deck type breakdown. In addition to them not having Camellia, they also don't have Baron de Fleur. And also you have to remember, all these deck lists, none of them have Sprite Elf. And now we look at pure Yummy. Yummy breakdown for the TCG. You're going to ignore any deck using the Izuna Canines. We do not have that yet. It probably will come out for the anniversary of Konami Likes Money. So we could do, if it really bothers you, you could just see the icon of Izuna and ignore it, or you could click the word not, and then we're going to type in Izuna. This will filter out all the decks that have Izuna. We don't want to see it. It is now gone from our site. If you want to further do tier 3 only events, just like that, you are great. And what caught my eye down here is if you want to possibly play Colossus. Colossus is legal in all 3 formats. If you want to be clapping up with Cupid Pitch and searching for the Corridor, be my guest. Now, the Corridor is going to be returning a banished card back in your deck. That banished card is going to be the Samsara. That's how you're going to enable the Colossus play. And then here is the OCG. They have a high preference for the Fiendsmith way to play the deck. It's going to be up to you if you want to play that. Again, you're going to want to see what does well in the Meta Weekly or other community tournaments, and also people top and master or getting highest rating in Master Duel. Warlord Savage Dragon banned in the TCG, and again, no Sprite Elf for neither the TCG or OCG. And yes, I hear you. You know all the ways to get the best deck lists as they pour in from tournaments and top ratings and Master 1. You still want a deck list on day 1 to play right away. I think this could be a good Yummy deck list sample if you want to play pure Yummy. Whereas Camellia, you don't need it in pure Yummy, and you are going to be optionally playing Bell in this. If people are playing Draco Tail, it could help deal with their traps. Also against Mitsurugi, Ghost Bell is going to be great. You can, if you want, up the Sky Striker Engage to 3 by taking out any other hand trap. You could take out the Nibiru or the Ghost Bells, and we have a neat little feature on the website if you don't know yet. You click on Share to Master Duel, and if you haven't already, you should have connected your Master Duel account to the official Yu-Gi-Oh!-card.com website, and by doing so, you can never lose your account. You are automatically sending your deck list to the website, which is then sending your deck list to in-game. After sharing your deck to Master Duel, you could go in-game, click on deck, and then you're going to click on the plus sign. You're going to click on copy from link deck list. Now, Yummy has not officially released yet as I'm debuting this, but look, I have 438 decks, and this is the Yummy deck I submitted. It's going to be blanked out with all the Yummy cards before they come out. You'll simply click copy deck, copy it, and then you now have your Yummy deck ready. Once it is actually released, it will then fill up with all the Yummy cards we don't have yet. And there you have it, Yummy guide. Hopefully you enjoyed. I will see you on twitch.tv/Decade on the day of the new pack, as we're going to be showcasing Yummy in the tournament and all that good stuff and more. Let's go.